No idea how you got it down to 5, Darren Lockyer, but number 5, Game 3, 1991, Farewell the King.
Yeah, that was at Lane Park, and he was my hero growing up. It's the reason why I followed rugby league and wanted to wear the number 6 playing for Queensland. And there was all the debate around him missing the 1990 Kangaroo Tour, and sort of the back end of his career, his body was starting to fail, but it was fitting, that he got to say farewell with an Origin Series win at Lane Park, and it was a tight game, but I just always remember him. It would have been Lincoln, I would think. He was carrying Lincoln around, waving to the crowd with the big armband on from the broken arm the year before.
Number 4 is another farewell, compadre of yours, JT, and it was last year, Game 2. What a way to sign off for him.
Yeah, people talk about, JT should come back just for one more year, but I think if you look at his last ever moment in Origin Arena, it's a pretty special one. He missed Origin 1 because he hurt his shoulder in playing for Australia in the Test match, and he came back, and he obviously wasn't 100% fit, but he wanted to give it, a shot because he knew the team needed him 1-0 down in the series, and look, at half time it looked very bleak for Queensland, but we came back out, and there's no better person to have the ball when the scores are level, and JT comes in and does that.
I think people underestimate too how much you actually use your shoulder in a kick, and for him to do that, and when he kicks, you can see that relief. That was an amazing set of events there. Number 3, we go back to the inaugural Game 1, 1980, the birth of Origin.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I was 3 when this game went, so I never saw it live, obviously, but you always see the highlights of this game, and I think everyone talks about the history of what went on before 1980, and Arthur Beetson, the symbol of him becoming Queensland captain. Only played one game, but he came out there, and obviously, one of the first things he did was he snotted one of his Parramatta teammates, Mick Cronin. So I think that was like a statement to say that this is we're here to we represent Queensland, and he was obviously the father of State of Origin for Queensland, and a lot of people always talk about him in the highest regard. Chris Close had a bit to deal with him as a manager of the Origin team. No more passionate Queenslander than Choppy Close, and pretty handy footballer at the time too. And I look back on some of his highlights, and geez, he was strong.
One of the great series, number 2, it's Game 3. You win the first game 18-10. New South Wales reply 16-12 in Game 2. Games in the balance, Game 3, 2012.
Yeah, at Cooper Cronk. Yes, it was about 41 metres out? Yeah. Never looked like missing, so... I mean, through that, you talk about the dominance of 12 series in 13 years, but geez, there was only one series whitewash, so it always it came down to a decider, and there were so many moments that we look back, and whether it was Thurston or it was Smith or it was Slater, that just come up with the right play at the right time to win the game and the series. But this time it was Cooper Cronk, and I talk about the roar that comes from the fans at Suncorp Stadium, and it doesn't get any bigger than that.
Number 2, hey? Number 1, it's got to be the King, doesn't it? Of course it is. Number 1, Game 2, 1989. He carries a state home, doesn't he?
He does. There was, I'm not saying it's the same build-up, but in terms of what's going on right now with Queenslanders, with injuries here, left, right and centre, but, it was this, they got to the game and they lost, I think Elf broke his leg, I think. There was,
Michael
Hancock, Bob. The list was endless. They just kept losing players, and Wally Lewis, won 8 man of the matches, played 31 games. He was so, and that's why he's always going to be regarded as the King, because he was so dominant at this level. And that try where he runs to the outside of, I think it might be Laurie Daly. Yeah. And then he comes to Gary.
To the right, was it to the right?
Yeah, he comes out to the right, and then Gary Jack comes across and just couldn't stop him. When you look back, he just made it look easy, Wally. I don't know how he did it, but he just did.
Wow. By half-time, the Maroons had lost Langer, broken leg, Mal, a fractured eye socket, Fatty, an elbow, Hancock went up with his shoulder, Bobby Lidner, he played up with a fractured ankle, so it was just all at sea. But the King got him home, and he's number 1 for the top Queensland wins according to Darren Lockyer.